Churchill had only meant to pass the holding camp on his way to the command post, but he stopped when the prisoner line shifted and one German man stood without a tag, without a file card, and without a place in the count, while the camp clerk lowered his book as if the missing number was too dangerous to write. And when Churchill asked one simple question, every officer near the gate suddenly tried to move him away from the line. Churchill arrived at the German POW holding camp in a British staff car while rain still clung to the road, and the camp commandant hurried to greet him with a prepared report that listed prisoners, guards, rations, medical cases, and transfers planned for the next morning. The British officer in charge, Major Ellison, explained that the camp was temporary and crowded, yet orderly enough for a short visit. But Churchill looked beyond the report toward a prisoner column waiting beside the processing tent where numbers were being pinned to coats. The first group passed the table in silence while clerks checked tags against cards, and each prisoner lifted his sleeve long enough to show a paper number, until one man near the center of the line stepped forward with an empty coat front and no card in his hand. A clerk tried to push the man aside for later processing, but Churchill stopped walking and asked why that prisoner had no number, making Ellison turn sharply toward the German interpreter before anyone had time to prepare an answer. The interpreter said the man had arrived late from a broken transport and would be numbered after the inspection, but Churchill asked why his boots were dry when the transport road was soaked and why his coat was older than the men who supposedly arrived with him. The nameless prisoner kept his hands at his sides, and when a British guard ordered him to state his name, he gave one German surname that did not appear on the intake sheet, while the clerk quickly closed the book before Churchill could see the missing entry. Churchill ordered the book reopened on the table, and Ellison found a blank space between two registered prisoners where a number had been skipped, not crossed out, not corrected, but left waiting as though someone had intended to fill it after the visit ended. The German liaison officer, Captain Brandt, claimed skipped numbers were common during fast intake, but a British corporal pulled the unused tag strip from the clerk's box and found that the missing number had already been torn away. Churchill asked for the torn tag, and the clerk said it must have fallen in the mud, yet a guard searching beneath the table found it folded inside a matchbox, hidden beneath 3 cigarette ends and a scrap of waxed paper. The tag carried no name, but its back had a tiny pencil mark shaped like a cross beside the letter R, and when the nameless prisoner saw it, he stepped backward as if the mark meant more than the number itself. Churchill ordered the prisoner removed from the transfer line and placed under British guard, then told Ellison to halt all processing until the camp could explain why one man had no number while the missing number had been hidden before he arrived. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The escalation began when Ellison ordered every intake card from the morning convoy spread across 2 tables, and the British clerks discovered that the nameless prisoner appeared in no transport manifest, no medical check sheet, and no ration column, although several guards admitted seeing him near the wash tent before sunrise. Churchill asked that the prisoner be searched carefully, and inside the lining of his coat a guard found a thin strip of map paper sewn beneath the collar, showing a railway junction, a river bridge, and a small mark beside a village chapel. The prisoner refused to explain the map, but when Ellison placed the hidden tag beside it, the man pointed to the letter R and then to the bridge mark, forcing the interpreter to admit that the prisoner was saying the letter was not an initial but a warning. Brandt tried to dismiss the gesture as confusion, yet Churchill ordered him away from the table and asked the British guards who had handled the convoy whether anyone else had tried to speak before being processed. A young guard named Peters said one prisoner had whispered in English near the wash tent, saying the wrong man was being counted, but a German orderly dragged him back into the group before Peters understood the sentence. The wash tent was searched next, and beneath a loose plank the guards found a wet identity card with the name Otto Reiner, a numbered tag matching the hidden strip, and a British medical dressing folded around a piece of wire. The discovery changed the case because the nameless man was not simply unprocessed, and Ellison ordered the camp divided by arrival groups, while Churchill remained beside the table, watching Brant grow quiet as every new object pointed back to the skipped number. Peters identified the prisoner who had spoken English, a thin mechanic named Vogel, and when he was brought forward, he said Reiner had been pulled from the convoy because he knew a route used by German officers escaping through railway service tunnels. Before Vogel could finish, a fight broke out near the far fence where two prisoners tried to force their way toward the latrine trench, and British guards dragged them back with torn paper hidden in one man's sleeve. The torn paper matched the map stripped from the nameless prisoner's coat, and it showed another section of the same route, including the chapel, the bridge, and a freight siding outside the village. Churchill ordered Brant detained. The German orderlies separated, and the transport wagons searched before dusk because the missing number had now become part of a divided map that several prisoners were trying to hide, move, or destroy. In the last wagon, Ellison found a wooden floor panel recently lifted, and beneath it lay a prisoner cap, a cut bootlace, and a second card for Otto Reiner, stamped with a transfer order that had no destination, no signature, and no reason to exist. The major consequence came when Churchill ordered the nearby railway junction secured, and Ellison sent 2 patrols to the bridge and freight siding while the camp remained locked under British control, with every German clerk kept away from the records tent. The first patrol returned from the freight siding with a tool bag hidden inside an abandoned signal box, and inside the bag were civilian clothes, railway keys, and 3 blank prisoner tags prepared for men who had not yet passed through the camp. The bridge patrol found fresh boot prints leading into a maintenance tunnel beneath the track, and a British engineer discovered that one access door had been opened from the inside, meaning someone had already used the route after the convoy arrived. Churchill ordered Brant brought to the records tent and placed the keys, tags, and map strips before him, but Brant insisted he was only a liaison officer and knew nothing about railway tunnels, even as his own gloves carried grease from the same signal box lock. Ellison searched Brant's quarters and found a coded note hidden inside a shaving case, listing 3 prisoner numbers, 1 chapel bell time, and the phrase, "replace the man without a number," which made the skip tag central to a larger exchange plan. The nameless prisoner finally gave his real name as Matthias Kroll, and he said Reiner had been taken from the wash tent because he recognized Brant from a military transport office where escape papers had been issued during the final collapse. Kroll explained that Brant's men meant to send a false prisoner out under Reiner's number, then move Reiner through the railway tunnel before British records could prove he had ever entered the camp. The consequence struck the camp immediately because Churchill ordered all prisoner numbers checked against faces, scars, accents, and arrival witnesses, turning a simple tag process into a full identity investigation that stopped every transfer and exposed several borrowed names. One borrowed name led to a former railway guard hiding among ordinary POWs, and he admitted that the chapel mark on the map showed a meeting point where escape papers would be passed to German officers disguised as released prisoners. Ellison led a patrol to the village chapel and found a packet hidden behind loose stone near the bell rope, containing false British travel permits, ration coupons, and a list of officers who were never meant to remain prisoners. The packet also contained one folded note from Reiner, written in rough English, warning that he had been moved alive but injured through the maintenance tunnel and that the man without a number had been forced to carry the first part of the map. Churchill ordered medical carts prepared, railway exits sealed, and the camp kitchens searched for hidden clothing, because the missing number had now exposed a system that could move officers, prisoners, and witnesses through the same gate under different names. By nightfall, Brandt's command over the German orderlies had collapsed. The false permits were locked in a British evidence chest, and Reiner's survival turned the investigation from a paper fraud into a rescue before the tunnel network swallowed him completely. The major reversal came just before dawn when a railway worker brought to the camp by British patrols said the maintenance tunnel did not lead out of the area because a collapse near the river had blocked the far exit 2 days earlier. Ellison spread the railway diagram across the table, and the worker marked a service branch that looped back under the village road toward an old coal depot, which meant Reiner had not been taken away from the camp district but hidden close enough to be moved during the next transfer. Churchill ordered a quiet search of the depot without sounding the camp alarm, because any visible panic might warn the men still inside the prisoner lines who were waiting to complete Brandt's exchange. At the coal depot, British soldiers found no Reiner, but they discovered a burned jacket, a medical splint, and a fresh chalk mark on the wall matching the cross drawn on the hidden number tag. Kroll was brought under escort to see the mark, and he shocked the officers by saying the cross did not mean danger, because Reiner had used it to show safe places where evidence had been hidden from Brandt's men. The reversal changed Reiner from a helpless, missing witness into an active guide leaving a trail, and Churchill ordered every marked location searched as a possible message instead of a hiding place. The next mark appeared on the back of a coal receipt nailed to a shed post, and behind it Ellison found a scrap of paper listing 3 names from the camp staff, including one British civilian translator who had been helping Brandt pass forged permits through inspection. The translator, Mr. Hale, was arrested at the records tent while carrying a satchel of prisoner cards, and inside the satchel were 5 blank number tags, a British stamp pad, and a pass already prepared for Reiner under another name. Hale claimed he had been forced, but Kroll identified his handwriting on the first map strip, and the case reversed again because the escape network was not only German but had someone inside the British processing system. A runner arrived from the depot reporting that another chalk cross had been found on a drainage wall, and Ellison followed it to a locked grain store behind the village, where Reiner was found alive under sacks, weak from injury but still holding a torn page from Brandt's officer list. Reiner was carried back to the camp under guard, but he warned that the exchange was already moving because one officer named on the list had taken his place in the prisoner line using the missing number that Churchill had stopped. Churchill ordered the morning transfer line rebuilt from the beginning, and the reversal became complete when the man wearing Reiner's stolen number was found not in Brandt's hut, not in the tunnel, but standing among the prisoners with a shaved face, a false limp, and British travel papers hidden in his boot. The final irreversible event began when Churchill ordered the false prisoner pulled from the line and placed before Reiner, Kroll, Hale, Brandt, and every British clerk who had touched the transfer file since the convoy arrived. Reiner identified him as Colonel Arndt, a logistics officer who had arranged railway escape routes for German staff, and Ellison found that Arndt's false tag carried the exact number Churchill had seen missing the day before. The stolen tag, the blank cards, the chapel permits, and the tunnel keys were placed in order across the processing table, and the pattern showed how one unnumbered prisoner had been used to create an empty space for an officer to disappear through British paperwork. Brandt tried to blame Hale for the whole network, but Reiner produced the torn officer list he had carried from the grain store, and Brandt's name appeared beside payment marks, vehicle times, and the chapel bell signal. Hale confessed only after Peters found a second stamp pad hidden inside the lining of his satchel, and he admitted that Arndt was supposed to leave that morning with a group of ordinary prisoners, while Reiner died, without ever being registered. Churchill ordered Arndt, Brandt, Hale, and the German orderlies separated for military investigation, then directed Ellison to suspend every transfer until all numbers were reissued by British clerks in front of witnesses. The irreversible break came when Kroll was given the missing number publicly, not as a stolen identity, but as a protected witness record, while Reiner's true card was rewritten and signed by 3 officers so it could never be replaced again. British engineers sealed the railway tunnel entrances with armed guards, and the chapel packet was sent to headquarters under escort with the officer list, the forged permits, and the torn map strips that had started with the man who had no number. The prisoners watched as the old tag box was emptied onto a table and burned under British supervision after every valid number had been copied, which ended the quiet system that had allowed men to trade names before passing through the gate. Arndt made one final attempt to speak to the prisoner line, but Churchill ordered him removed before he could signal anyone, and the British guards found a final folded route card pressed under his tongue. The route card named 2 more depots beyond the river, and Ellison sent patrols before noon, turning the stopped inspection into a wider sweep that captured 3 civilian guides waiting with clothing, food, and papers for officers who never arrived. The final act could not be undone because one missing number had broken the escape chain, saved Reiner, exposed Hale, trapped Arndt, and forced the whole camp to rebuild its records around living witnesses instead of convenient blanks. That evening, Churchill stood beside the processing table while Kroll received a clean tag and Reiner signed the witness sheet with a bandaged hand, and the prisoner line moved again only after every face matched a number. The tag that had been hidden in a matchbox was sealed inside the evidence chest, and when Arndt was taken through the gate under guard, Churchill watched the clerks leave no empty spaces in the book that had almost carried a dangerous man to freedom. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WWII stories.